It was a Sunday like any other. The bells of St. Dominic's rang clear across the village, summoning the faithful from quiet homes and winding streets. Children ran ahead of their parents. Old men adjusted their coats. Mothers straightened their daughters' collars with proud, gentle hands. Inside the church, everything gleamed. The white marble floors had been waxed the night before. Brass candlesticks shimmered in the soft light of stained glass windows. The altar cloth was pressed and flawless. It was a special day the bishop himself would celebrate the morning mass. And for one boy, it was the most important day of all. Matteo stood in the small sacristy at the back of the church, nervously tugging at the hem of his oversized robe. He was only 10, but today he would serve beside the bishop for the first time. He had practiced for days how to hold the censer, how to bow, how to keep his hands folded when walking. His mother had woken early to press his robe with care. She'd brushed his hair and kissed his forehead 3 times before they left the apartment, but she couldn't do anything about his shoes. They were old, brown leather, cracked and scuffed, a size too big handed down from an uncle who had once worked at a hotel. She had polished them the night before, praying that the shine would distract from the peeling soles. Matteo didn't care. He wasn't thinking about shoes. He was thinking about the bells, the altar. The moment he'd step into that sacred space, with his heart beating like a drum in his chest. The church was full, packed. Even the standing room in the back overflowed with parishioners. The bishop entered in full vestments, his mitre tall and white, his crozier gleaming. Cameras flashed. A live stream was running for those who couldn't fit inside. Matteo stepped out behind the priest, holding the incense. His hands shook a little. The service began. The liturgy flowed. All was going well until it wasn't. It happened during the Gloria. The bishop glanced down at Matteo's feet. He paused, squinted. And then, with the microphone still clipped to his robe, he said loudly, "What are those?" The music stopped. Matteo froze. The bishop turned fully toward him, now frowning. "Who dressed this boy? These shoes are a disgrace." A murmur rippled through the pews. Matteo looked down. His shoes, the ones his mother had polished with so much love, were visible below his robe. The bishop wasn't done. "We are in the house of the Lord. This is not a street corner. This is not a shelter. This is the altar of God." Matteo felt something collapse inside him. From the middle pews, a woman stood. It was his mother. She looked as though someone had just slapped her, her face pale, her hands trembling. She whispered his name. "Matteo." The bishop raised a hand. "Please, madam, this is not a time for excuses. We cannot have our altar servers looking like beggars." Laughter, somewhere in the back. Covered coughs. Matteo took a step back, then another. His lip trembled, but he didn't cry. Not yet. His mother rushed to the front. She reached for his hand. "Come, baby, let's go." No one moved. No one stopped them. The bishop turned back to the altar. "Let us continue." But the joy had drained from the church. The music felt heavy now. The sermon that followed was careful, awkward. The people shifted in their seats, as if something sacred had been cracked in half. Outside, on the church steps, Matteo sat down. His mother knelt beside him, holding him close. He still hadn't said a word. "Why did he yell?" he finally asked. She didn't answer. She couldn't. He looked down at his shoes. "They're clean." "They are," she whispered. "They're perfect." "But he said God doesn't want me." "No," she said firmly, wiping his cheek. "That man said that, not God." But he was standing at the altar. The wind picked up. She pulled him into her arms. Inside the church, the incense rose, but it no longer felt like prayer. The church never spoke of it again. No statement. No apology. No mention in the parish bulletin. But the silence only made it worse. Because someone had filmed it. Not the whole Mass, just that one moment. The bishop pointing. The words, cold and sharp. The mother, rising. The boy, silent. 17 seconds. The clip was shaky, filmed from a phone near the back of the church. But it was enough. Someone uploaded it to social media with a short caption. "This is how the church welcomes the poor." At first it was ignored, another video in a sea of scrolling outrage, but then it was shared, then reshared, then picked up by a page that documented injustice in religious institutions. The comments poured in. "This broke me. I left the church for this exact reason. Where is compassion? Where is Christ?" People didn't know the boy's name. They just called him the barefoot altar boy. Some argued. Some defended. Some stayed silent. But across oceans, across walls of marble and gold, across the ancient silence of Rome, someone was watching. In a small room inside the Apostolic Palace, late at night, a man sat in a plain white chair. He had no crown, no gold, just a wooden cross around his neck and tired eyes. His name was known around the world. Pope Leo XIV. He watched the video once. Then again. He didn't blink. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped. The room was quiet. Just the hum of old Vatican walls and the soft rustle of paper behind him. He closed his eyes and remembered something. A boy, small and nervous, walking into a church in Detroit in winter. The boots he wore had holes in them. His hands were red from the cold. No one greeted him. No one smiled. He remembered that pain, that sting, that moment when a child starts to believe that even God has favorites. He opened his eyes. "This boy," he said softly, "he was humiliated before the altar." The aide beside him hesitated. "Yes, Your Holiness, but we're not sure where." "Find out," the Pope said. "I want to know his name." The aide nodded and left the room. That night, Pope Leo couldn't sleep. He walked the stone corridors of the palace in silence. He prayed, not in Latin, not in chant, but the way he had learned as a boy, whispering, honest, with a heart that ached. He didn't ask for miracles. He asked for courage. Meanwhile, in the small village far away, Matteo sat on the floor of his apartment, staring at the shoes his mother had placed beside the door. She hadn't thrown them away. She couldn't. He hadn't been back to church. Not once. He avoided the streets near the square. He refused to wear his robe. He asked his mother if he could stop praying at night. When she said no, he simply folded his hands and kept his eyes open, waiting for the moment to pass. "He doesn't want me," Matteo said one night. "Not really." "Who?" she asked. "God." "Why would you say that?" "Because I tried my best," he whispered, "and it wasn't enough." She held him close, but said nothing. What do you say to a child who feels rejected by heaven? She didn't know that the world was already watching. She didn't know that one man had made a decision. 3 days later, a letter arrived at the parish. No name, just a golden seal. The bishop opened it alone. His face turned pale. He read it once, then twice, then a third time just to be sure. He called the archdiocese, then the Monsignor, then the Vatican itself. But the answer was always the same. Yes, His Holiness is coming. No fanfare. No press release. Just a quiet statement. The Pope will attend Mass at St. Dominic's next Sunday. No one believed it at first. Some thought it was a hoax. But when the Swiss Guard arrived ahead of schedule, when the security checks began, when the villagers saw the black sedan sweeping through the countryside, they knew. It was real. Matteo didn't know. His mother didn't tell him. She only said they'd be going to Mass that Sunday, together, sitting in the back. She had bought him a new white shirt. Not because of the Pope, she didn't know why, but something told her it mattered. He asked her quietly, "Will anyone laugh this time?" She smiled, even as her eyes filled with tears. "No," she whispered. "No one will laugh." That night, she prayed. Not for fame, not for revenge, just for grace. Because somewhere deep inside, she knew something was coming. The morning sun broke gently over the village. A soft breeze stirred the curtains. Church bells rang, slow and solemn. It was Sunday. Matteo dressed without speaking. His mother stood behind him, buttoning the new white shirt. It was still a little big, but it was clean, crisp. Her hands trembled slightly. He looked at her. "You don't have to come." She touched his cheek. "Yes, I do." They left the apartment hand in hand, walking through narrow streets, still waking from sleep. People nodded silently. Some avoided eye contact. Others offered awkward smiles. But no one spoke of what had happened. They reached the church just before the first hymn. It was full, tighter than usual. Security stood discreetly near the side doors. Visitors they had never seen before filled the pews. Cameras had been placed, but no one dared say why. At the altar, the bishop stood tall, his expression unreadable. He had not addressed the rumors, had not explained the sudden presence of Vatican officials. He simply began the Mass, voice firm, hands steady. Matteo and his mother sat near the back. He did not wear his robe. He did not walk with the other altar servers. He was just another boy in a wooden pew, holding his breath. The Mass began. The prayers flowed. But tension filled the air like smoke. Then, just before the gospel reading, the side door opened, and silence fell. The cameras didn't flash. They didn't need to. Everyone recognized him instantly. Dressed in simple white, head bowed, the Pope stepped into the church. No guards, no entourage, no announcement. Just a man, humble, steady. Matteo's heart stopped. His mother gasped. Her hand covered her mouth. The bishop froze mid-sentence. Pope Leo walked past the pews without a word. His eyes scanned the room gently and stopped when they reached the boy in the white shirt. Matteo didn't blink. Their eyes met. Just for a second. And then the Pope walked to the altar. He leaned close to the bishop and whispered something. The bishop's face turned pale. Then the Pope turned to the congregation. His voice was quiet, but every word rang clear. "Brothers and sisters," he said, "forgive me, but today I will not continue this Mass as planned." A stir. Confusion. The bishop stepped back. The Pope turned and began to walk down the center aisle. Each step echoed like thunder. People turned to follow him with their eyes. Some stood. Some whispered. But no one moved. The Pope walked straight to the back, to the boy in the white shirt, and stopped. Matteo looked up, eyes wide. The Pope knelt. The most powerful man in the church bowed his head and gently reached for the boy's feet. Matteo flinched. "No." But the Pope smiled softly. "Let me." Then, from beneath his robe, he pulled out a small silver bowl. He placed it on the ground. He looked to Matteo's mother. "May I?" She couldn't speak. She only nodded, tears already running down her face. Matteo, frozen, slowly removed his shoes. The Pope took the boy's foot in his hands. Old, tired, holy hands. He poured the water. Warm, gentle. He washed. Not like a priest, not like a pope, but like a servant, like a father. Gasps rippled through the pews. Phones trembled in silent hands. Some wept openly. Others dropped to their knees. The bishop looked away. When the Pope was done, he dried the boy's feet with a white cloth. Then he looked up, eyes glistening. "This," he said, turning to the crowd, "is the altar. This child, these feet, this humility is where God truly dwells." He stood slowly, with difficulty. He faced the church. "Forgive us," he said, voice trembling, "for forgetting what love looks like." He turned to Matteo. "You reminded us." The boy could not speak. He only stared, lips trembling, hands shaking. The Pope embraced him, and the church that had once judged erupted in silence. No applause, no noise, just tears and reverence. In the quiet, someone began to pray. A woman, then a man, then all. Not from habit, not from duty, but from awe. They were witnessing something sacred, something real. And above it all, in a small live stream on a flickering screen, a mother in Brazil, a girl in Ghana, a priest in Detroit, all watched with wide eyes. The church was changing, not with laws, not with documents, but with water and hands and a child's faith. The church stood still, not a cough, not a shuffle, just breathing, quiet, reverent. Matteo sat frozen, his feet now dry, his heart pounding like thunder inside his chest. The Pope remained kneeling before him, hands still cradling the damp white cloth. The water in the silver bowl trembled slightly, as if it too felt something sacred had just happened. The silence stretched long, heavy. Then the Pope stood, slowly, with care, with the grace of a man who carried the weight of more than robes. He turned back toward the altar and walked, not like a ruler, not like a priest, but like someone changed. He reached the steps, turned to face the congregation. People had risen to their feet. Others had dropped to their knees. Some cried openly. A mother held her child tighter. A man who hadn't stepped into a church in 10 years now bowed his head and crossed himself. And in the middle of it all, Matteo remained seated, his mother beside him, their hands intertwined. The Pope raised his eyes, took a breath, and began to speak. Today, he said, this church became holy again. His voice was calm, gentle, each word slow, measured like a prayer in motion. We polish marble, we hang gold, we dress in white and chant in Latin, but none of it matters. He paused. None of it matters if a child believes that God does not want him. A murmur, a wave of emotion. He stepped closer to the crowd, his voice steady. For too long, the church has honored beauty, but forgotten mercy. We have praised dignity, but ignored humility. We have welcomed kings and turned away barefoot children. He looked toward Matteo. And yet, it is here, in this moment, that I have seen the face of God. The cameras captured every word. The world watched millions across continents, cities, villages, bedrooms, prisons. No script, no teleprompter, just truth. Today, the Pope said, a child walked into God's house with cracked shoes and was sent away. But now, we have walked back to him. And I say to you all, he paused, voice shaking, this is the altar. He pointed gently, slowly, not to the marble table behind him, but to the pew where Matteo sat. This child, his heart, his courage, his silence, his pain, his faith. This is the altar most pure. A single sob broke the silence. Then another. Then from the very back slow, halting applause. Just one pair of hands. Then two. Then the sound filled the church like rain after drought. Not cheers, but reverence, gratitude. Matteo looked down again at his shoes, now placed neatly beside him on the floor. His mother held him, not tightly, just enough. The Pope raised his hand, and the applause faded like mist. He looked out at the people. Go home and look at your tables, your children's drawings, your grandmother's hands, the man on the corner with tired eyes. That is your altar. He turned back to the altar itself. He bowed, not to tradition, but to truth. Then, slowly, he walked back down the aisle. And when he reached Matteo, he stopped. He leaned in and whispered something. No one heard it. Only the boy. And the boy smiled. Then the Pope gently touched the top of Matteo's head. The doors opened, and sunlight poured in. He stepped outside. The crowd followed. In the square, thousands waited. Reporters, tourists, locals, pilgrims. Some knelt. Some cried. But the Pope raised no hand. He made no speech. He simply turned, reached back, and took Matteo's hand. And together, Pope and child, they stood beneath the morning sun, the man in white and the boy in broken shoes, side by side. And the world, just for a moment, forgot its noise. The sun had long set over Rome, but in every corner of the world, That morning still echoed. The image of a pope, bent on his knees, washing the feet of a poor boy. It traveled faster than sermons, faster than doctrine, faster than dogma. It became something else. A symbol. A story. A quiet revolution made of water and humility. In a small chapel in Guatemala, a priest printed the image and taped it to the pulpit. He didn't preach that Sunday. He simply pointed to the picture and wept. In a crowded Manila market, a vendor paused her sales to show it to a child digging through trash. She didn't say much. She just said, "You see, God does see you." In Warsaw, in Cape Town, in Mumbai, in homes, in classrooms, in hospitals, people who hadn't prayed in years closed their eyes and whispered, "Maybe." The Vatican never released the boy's full name, but the internet found it. Matteo, son of Lucia, from a village with more goats than people. Yet no one remembered the bishop's name. No one quoted his sermon. But everyone remembered the boy's shoes. They were everywhere. Someone printed them on t-shirts. Another sculpted them in bronze and placed them at the steps of their cathedral. One artist painted a fresco of Matteo standing at heaven's gate still in those worn, taped-up shoes, and above him, Christ smiling. Journalists tried to find him. But Matteo wasn't interested in microphones or interviews. He just wanted to go back to helping his mother hang laundry, to running through fields barefoot, to lighting candles in secret when no one was watching. But one afternoon, a black car came to his village. Simple. No flags, no cameras. Inside it, a man in white. No guards, no ceremony. Just the Pope. He came not to speak, not to bless. He came to listen. They sat under the olive tree behind Matteo's house. The boy offered him a slice of bread. The Pope accepted it with both hands. They said nothing for a long while. And then the Pope asked, "Why did you smile when I knelt?" Matteo looked up. "Because I knew you saw me." That visit was never documented. No headlines. No official statement. Just a story told by a neighbor. Passed from lips to lips. Quietly. Months passed. One morning, in St. Peter's Square, a new sculpture was unveiled. It wasn't of saints, or apostles, or ancient martyrs. It was of a boy, kneeling, hands clasped, eyes raised, and, on his feet, worn shoes. No plaque, no name, just a verse etched in stone. "Whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me." Tourists cried. Pilgrims left flowers. A child placed his own shoes beside the statue. And somewhere, in a distant village, Matteo helped his mother plant basil, chased fireflies at dusk, prayed under his breath, not because someone told him to, but because he wanted to. In the Vatican, the Pope kept a photo on his desk. Not of dignitaries, not of ceremonies, but of that moment, of him kneeling, and Matteo blinking away tears. He once said to a cardinal, "That boy reminded me that altars are not made of gold. They are made of courage and cracked shoes." Time went on. Other headlines came and went. Other scandals, other miracles. But in a way, no one could measure something had shifted. Churches opened their doors wider. Choirs added children's voices that had once been told to hush. Some priests started washing feet more often, and not just on Holy Thursday. Years later, in a seminary in Argentina, a young man stood up and said, "I want to serve, because when I was little, I saw a pope kneel before a poor child, and I believed maybe God could see me too." No one had to explain. They all knew the story. And so the tale continued. Not through papal decrees, not through stained glass, but through whispers at bedtime, through drawings hung on fridges, through tiny acts of kindness done when no one's watching, and in the quietest corners of the earth, in train stations, in refugee camps, in forgotten villages. Whenever a child was ignored, or dismissed, or told they didn't belong. Someone would say, "Do you know the story of the boy with broken shoes?" And hearts would soften, because it was never just about the boy, and never just about the Pope. It was about all of us, and the hope that one day, when we kneel for love, not power. And when we look up, we see not rank, not robes, but the eyes of someone who says, "I see you," and that is enough.